So the structure has that syntax here. We have the structure, the keyword structure, followed by the name of the structure. Again, this is just the variable name. And then inside the structure you have different data types or different fields. Okay, just different variable names to store each data type. Okay, if you think of this like it's like a container, right, or inside a house or a building or something. This is the name of that building, of the house. Inside that building of the house, what do you have in there, right? You have objects, you have people, you have furniture, beds, and so on. Right? All those stuff are part of the house. So you think of it that way if it's easier to visualize. But this is one of those type of data that you have to declare inside the global space. Okay, you cannot put this inside a function or a method or a subroutine. Okay, it needs to be inside the global space. So let's go ahead and create a project to do that. I'm going to call mine. This is chapter 7. I'll call this structure. Okay. It's my typical design. Let's add some stuff to this box here. Also view my properties. I want to make sure you start in the center. And I'll just add, we're going to add a list box here to put the data out. Usually that's easier because the list box, it can change in size. It allows multiple lines, and that's easy. So usually that's a really good example to output data to. Okay, I'm going to change the name of that just to result or output. I'll call it result. And then let me change the font size to something like 20 as usual. And let's put a button here. I could just load the form and display it, but let's just say that we want to control this. So the button, the name of that will just be anything. Just say show it. It's fine. And the name of that button would be btn show it. So we know. Just give it some color background, make it a little bit more fun. All right, so we're just going to basically, output some data to this list box here. Using a structure. Okay. So go ahead and double click the show it button. And let me turn this off now. Alright. So here is our subroutine called button show click. So again, the structure cannot be put inside here. So you can't, for example, you can't put structure in here. As you can see, it won't let me do it, right? It needs to go outside in the global space, or in the class space, or the module space. They all mean the same. So out here, I'll put structure, and you give it a name. You can call it a structure of student. And by convention, it's usually singular, okay, because this one here is kind of aligned with objects-oriented programming. So we have a class or something like that is usually a singular. So here, if you have a class of form 1, notice you don't see the word forms 1, right? It's singular because when you create an object of this data type, each of those object or variable is a single person. Okay, so student 1 is one person of type student, and inside the student you have different properties. Okay, so the student have a name, has an age, has a class, takes class, has a email, and so on. Okay, so that's just the convention. Of course, there's no rule. You can call it whatever you want, but you'll see that is the standard way. So inside here, now I can declare some variables to store this student information. I can say name as string to store the name of the student. I'm going to declare a ID as integer to store the student's ID, assuming that it's only a number. And we can do one more for maybe email as string. And let's do one more just to show you have a different data type. You can say graduated as Boolean. It's a true or false, right? So you can see a structure of student that has many different data types. And you're not limited to just those primitive data type. I could use this, for example, I could have to do this, but I could do something like classes array of strings in here, right? You can see how this looks just like similar. I can have like a string of maybe 4 classes or 5 classes, for example. No, actually, I cannot specify the size because it will be different. So you can have that in there as well. If you have another structure, you can also assign that as type structure. So the list can get complicated, but you can do all of that. So for now, we have a structure of student, and now we can use this as a data type. Okay. So let me go here, and inside this sub here, I'm going to declare a variable called maybe just student1, or maybe just for sure s1 is fine, as student. Okay, notice that I use that as a data type, not a string, because the student has many data types inside. It has a string, integer, string, and a boolean for 4 properties. So now the s1 access all these information here. It contains all of them. Now to read this data or to assign data to its name, you would use the dot notation, and that's by using s1 dot. As you can see, once you put the dot there, you see that it has access to the email, graduated ID, and name variables or fields. Okay, you can assign each of those. If you don't assign it, then they'll contain the default values. String will be just empty string, and number will be 0, and so on. So if you want to assign, s1 name to, Jack, okay, the student one's ID to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, s1's email to Jack. If you have a full name, maybe Jack Daniels. How's that? At gmail.com, for example, or be a string. And then you have s1 dot graduated. We'll just say true. Okay. So here we have created a single student called s1. These are that student's information. And so now we can print this out to the list box here, okay, by going through each of those and just do something like so lst result items add. You'll probably see this a million times right now. Adding what? The s1's name. Okay, and you do the same thing for the rest. You can just copy this 4 times, 3 times. The name, the ID, graduated or not, and then the email. Or you can combine them into a single line as well. You separate each by a comma or something. That's fine. Okay, so let's run this and see if that is what we expect. So when I click show it, you see it adds Jack's names, ID, and the email, and it says true because we said it's true. You could have changed it to something else, right? Let's say graduated or not graduated. Okay. So just to show that you have different data types inside the structure. So now what I show you here is not really an array yet, because we didn't use array. We used a standard variable name, right? This is not an array. What if you have a second student? What do you do then? Student number 2, right? So typically you say, oh, okay, I'm going to copy all this here and then change this to S2, right? And then S2 will be all that. You can see how this can get really tedious. Change the name to Bono. Oop. Is this still around? I don't know. Should say like that, and then we can say false, for example, right? So you can see if I have 10 students, you can see where that goes. Okay, it gets really tedious. So instead of doing this, you can have an array of student. Okay, and all you have to do is basically here, instead of S1, I could now say dim S of, let's just say 3 for 4 students as student. Now I have an array of 4 students. Okay, and I still have to go through the process of assigning their names and so on. I could use like an input box or a prompt, a window to have ask the user to input their name information there, and I would record it directly into that array and then print it out, right? You could do that. But let's just say that we're just going to add it manually in this case. You can do it this way, or you could say, well, yes, this way, 3, and then I'm just gonna copy this. Bless you. Copy this, put it here. Again, this is not the best way to do it, but usually, again, you read that from a text file, from a database file. It will be populated directly in there, or you ask the user to prompt a user screen for them to input the data. Well, let's just say now I want to add into the S. So the first student, S0's name would be Jack Daniels. Okay, the first student's ID is that. So you can see I just replaced those with the different index positions, and then I have those information there for Jack. So you can see you can use this as a loop, a loop through the entire array, and store those information. I'm just showing you that this is an array of students, and inside a student you have, because you have a structure, you can have different data types for that array. Okay, so because typically when you say str as string, right, you can't do like, let's go to 3, okay, because it's a different data type. But here it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you have because it's a structure, and that's how structure works, and that's also how object-oriented programming works. It's object. So now S is really an object of student. So I have S0, and I can now copy this again. I know it's kind of tedious, but go to the second student here, and then, oops, 1, 1, 1. I'll put different names in here. So you put like, you know, Mary Jane, you know, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. Just MJ. Okay, graduated, it's fine. Let's do one more for number 3, 2. This is, I don't know, is he around? Luke Perry? It's old guys now. and then let's put LP, and then let's say he did not graduate. Oops. Okay, I'm just going to have 3 instead of 4. You could do one more, but we'll leave it at that. And let me just comment this out. And right down here, I'm going to print them out. I'll use a loop instead of that, because if I don't use a loop, I'll be doing, like, for example, S of zeros name, right? F of 1, zeros ID, and you see. Let me just put that here for now so you can see it, and we'll change this to the loop. The email, and then of course finally the graduated or not. Okay, so you still have to print them out, separately like that, but the second student will be like S1, 1, and you copy this 4 times again and again. So this part, the tedious part, is just inputting the data. If you get that from elsewhere, it's much quicker. But now, since we have the data, we can print them out. So I could use a loop here. It's a single dimension, so it's not that bad. So I could use a for loop. So for we use the I as usual. I equals 0 to the index of that array. So it will be the s dot length, right? Or get upper bound. Maybe that's easier. Get upper bound. And this is a single array only, so we deal with that first dimension. And I'm just going to put the next at the end of that, so it will be embedding the LST box in there. So now, instead of 0, you'll put here the I, S of I. Okay. And then let's just say that at the end of that student, we're going to add another line here just to separate each student's information. And I just put here maybe like just some line, some dashes to separate that student from the rest. Okay. So if I have 1,000 students, 100 students, it's still just going to be 5 lines of code or 6 lines of code here. And let's run this and see that we have a problem. Anybody know why? To have an upper bound exception, I wonder if that's because I did not supply the fourth item there. Let's see if we reduce this back to just 2. Okay, because the fourth student was not there, and it tries to read the fourth student, and then maybe it doesn't have those data. Well, let's try that. From 0 to get up bound 0, which is 2 now, and so I guess that was the case. Okay, so here we have the first student and his information, the second student and her information here, and then the third student information is right there. Okay, so here I have like true and false only. I could say graduated, graduated, not graduated or something. Okay. And to do that, you would check for the false and true, right? So here you would say, instead of true and false, you can say if, down here, if s sub I dot graduate is true, then use graduated. Otherwise, print not graduated. Okay. Okay, so that is the structure. Any question on the structure? Just make sure that these are outside of the function or the subroutine, it cannot be put inside here. And doesn't matter what I put it, as long as it's outside the space. I could put it here, I could put it at the bottom of here, as long as it's contained within the class, then it should be fine. Okay, because this one has class scope. So when you render this, run this application, it will look in the class scope, put all these information in memory first, and then next it will run into the internal part, which is the subroutines. Okay, so you can put this anywhere in your code. It doesn't matter the order. In this case, it should still be fine. But it's just kind of weird to have it at the bottom. Usually it's always at the top. Okay?